90% of Icelandic homes are heated by geothermal energy. 70% of their tomatoes are grown locally in volcanic heated greenhouses. They produce nearly 100% of their own cucumbers in the Arctic. The United States has more geothermal potential than Iceland. How many geothermal greenhouses operate in America today? 44. In the entire country. Meanwhile, America imports 59% of its fresh fruit and 35% of its vegetables. The import industry is worth hundreds of billions, and almost no one is asking why we heat greenhouses with expensive fuel when free heat exists beneath our feet. Iceland sits just below the Arctic Circle. The sun disappears for months during winter. Temperatures drop below freezing. The growing season lasts barely 3 months. By every logical measure, this island should import all of its fresh produce. It should be completely dependent on foreign food supplies. It should be at the mercy of shipping costs and international supply chains. Instead, Iceland grows 70% of its own tomatoes. It produces nearly 100% of its own cucumbers. It harvests fresh vegetables in December when the sun barely rises above the horizon. How is this possible? The answer lies beneath their feet. Iceland sits on top of one of the most geologically active regions on Earth. Over 200 volcanoes, countless hot springs, an endless supply of heat rising from the ground. While other countries burn natural gas, propane, and heating oil to keep greenhouses warm, Iceland simply pipes hot water from the earth. The heat is essentially free. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year after year, decade after decade. This is not new technology. Iceland has been using geothermal energy for agriculture since 1924. That is over 100 years of proven working systems. 100 years of growing food in conditions that should make farming impossible. And yet most of the world acts like this method does not exist. In 1941, something remarkable happened in Iceland. Farmers discovered they could grow bananas, not as a curiosity, not as a scientific experiment, as actual commercial crops sold in local markets. Using nothing but geothermal heat piped into greenhouses, Icelandic farmers produced tropical fruit near the Arctic Circle. By 1945, multiple farms were growing and selling bananas commercially. The system worked. The fruit ripened. Customers bought local bananas instead of imported ones. For 15 years, Iceland proved that geographic limitations could be overcome with the right technology and tropical produce in Arctic conditions, fresh fruit without international shipping, food independence in one of the harshest climates on Earth. Then, in 1960, everything changed. The Icelandic government removed import duties on foreign fruit. Suddenly, bananas from Ecuador and the Philippines flooded the market at prices local farmers could not match. It did not matter that local production worked. It did not matter that the technology was proven. The economics had been deliberately altered to favor imports. Within months, commercial banana production collapsed. Farmers shut down their operations. The greenhouses that had successfully grown tropical fruit for 15 years went silent. Today, only 600 to 700 banana plants remain in Iceland. They exist at the Agricultural University of Iceland, for research, for education, not for sale. Iceland now imports over 18 kilograms of bananas per person per year. The volcanic heat still flows beneath their land. The knowledge of what their farmers once accomplished fades with each passing generation. But the tomato farmers learned a different lesson. In 1946, a farm called Fridheimer began using geothermal hot water for horticulture. For decades, production remained modest. The greenhouses existed, but never reached their potential. Then, in 1995, a couple named Nader and Helena purchased the farm. They found derelict greenhouses sitting on top of an unlimited heat source. They saw what others had missed. Between 2002 and 2006, they transformed the operation. They installed artificial lighting to compensate for Iceland's dark winters. They built new greenhouses, totaling over 5,000 square meters. They implemented year-round production systems. Today, Fridheimer alone produces 370 tons of tomatoes every year. One single farm provides 18% of all tomatoes consumed in Iceland. They harvest in January, they harvest in July. They harvest when the sun has not risen for weeks. The farm uses approximately 1.2 megawatts of electricity for grow lights during dark months. That sounds expensive until you realize Iceland's electricity comes almost entirely from renewable sources. 73% hydropower, 27% geothermal. The energy is clean and relatively cheap. Fridheimer is not alone. Across Iceland, greenhouse operations have multiplied. The country now produces 70% of its tomatoes domestically. Cucumber production has reached nearly 100% self-sufficiency. Lettuce, peppers, strawberries, herbs, and mushrooms all grow in volcanic heated greenhouses. In 2011, Iceland harvested 18,000 tons of vegetables from greenhouses. The number has continued to climb. What started as an experiment in the 1920s has become a national food security strategy. The import industry told Iceland that local production was not economically viable. Iceland proved them wrong. Now let me tell you about the United States. According to the United States Geological Survey, the western United States contains over 30 gigawatts of undiscovered conventional geothermal resources. The potential exists across California, Nevada, Oregon, Idaho, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and beyond. America has more geothermal resources than Iceland, significantly more. The heat is there. The technology is proven. Iceland demonstrated it works over 100 years ago. So how many geothermal greenhouses operate in America today? 44. In the entire country. With more geothermal potential than anywhere else on Earth. 44 greenhouses. Meanwhile, the United States imports 59% of its fresh fruit. We import 35% of our fresh vegetables. In 2021, fruits and vegetables accounted for nearly $39 billion of total agricultural imports. By 2025, projections show fresh produce imports exceeding $35 billion annually. We ship tomatoes from Mexico. We fly berries from Chile. We transport cucumbers across thousands of miles when the heat to grow them locally exists right beneath our soil. The average American greenhouse spends thousands of dollars annually on heating fuel. A commercial operation burning propane can spend over $170,000 per year just to maintain growing temperatures. Natural gas prices fluctuate wildly, sometimes tripling within a single year. Geothermal heat costs almost nothing once the system is installed. The Earth provides it for free, forever. So why does America have 44 geothermal greenhouses instead of 4,400? Instead of 44,000, follow the money. The global fresh produce import market is worth hundreds of billions of dollars annually. The United States alone imports over $30 billion in fresh fruits and vegetables every year. Shipping companies, distributors, international agricultural corporations, and import businesses all profit from this system. What happens to those profits if American farmers start growing their own tomatoes using free geothermal heat? What happens to the international banana trade worth over $17 billion if cold climate regions discover they can produce tropical fruit locally? What happens to the entire infrastructure of food dependency if communities realize the Earth itself can heat their greenhouses? The answer is obvious. Revenue disappears, profits collapse, entire business models become obsolete. Iceland learned this lesson in 1960. The moment import duties were removed, the economics shifted against local production. It did not matter that geothermal growing worked. It did not matter that farmers had succeeded for 15 years. Policy decisions made local production uncompetitive. The import industry did not need to ban geothermal greenhouses. They just needed to make sure the playing field stayed tilted in their favor. No subsidies for geothermal greenhouse construction. No education programs teaching farmers about the technology. No media coverage of Iceland's success. No agricultural extension services promoting the method. Just silence. Decade after decade of silence. Let me give you real numbers so you understand what we are talking about. A basic geothermal greenhouse system costs between $7,500 and $28,000 for materials. Construction adds another $3,500 to $35,000 depending on size and complexity. A complete 20 by 40 foot geothermal greenhouse with ground-to-air heat transfer system runs approximately $85,000 total. That sounds expensive, but compare it to ongoing heating costs. A commercial greenhouse burning propane can spend $1,000 to $1,200 per season just for a small operation. Larger facilities spend tens of thousands annually. One university study calculated that a greenhouse requiring 85,000 gallons of propane would spend over $170,000 per year at $2 per gallon. Geothermal systems have almost zero fuel costs after installation. The Earth provides heat continuously. There is no meter running. There is no bill arriving each month. A conventional greenhouse might spend $5,000 annually on heating. A geothermal greenhouse spends a fraction of that. Over 10 years, the savings can exceed $50,000. Over 30 years, the savings can exceed $150,000. The Environmental Protection Agency reports that geothermal systems reduce heating expenses by 30 to 70% compared to conventional systems. For greenhouses operating year-round in cold climates, the savings are even more dramatic. But here is the real question. If geothermal greenhouses are so economical, why do only 44 exist in America? The technology is not hidden. You can find scientific papers about geothermal greenhouses. You can visit Iceland and tour their operations. You can read about Fridheimer producing 370 tons of tomatoes annually. The information exists, but it is not promoted. Agricultural extension services do not teach it. Farming magazines rarely cover it. Government programs do not subsidize it. Banks do not have standard financing packages for it. If you want to build a conventional greenhouse, the path is clear. Suppliers, contractors, financing options, and support systems all exist. The infrastructure is established. If you want to build a geothermal greenhouse, you are largely on your own. Finding contractors who understand the technology is difficult. Navigating permits is confusing. Accessing expertise requires significant research. This is not an accident. This is how industries protect themselves from disruption. The import industry does not need to actively suppress geothermal greenhouse technology. They simply need to ensure it remains obscure. They need to make sure farmers never hear about it. They need to keep the 44 number from becoming 440. Iceland succeeded because the entire country aligned around geothermal utilization. The government supported it. The culture embraced it. The infrastructure developed over decades. America has left geothermal agriculture to scattered individuals working against systemic indifference. Let me summarize what Iceland has proven over the past century. First, geothermal greenhouses work in extreme climates. Iceland sits near the Arctic Circle with minimal winter sunlight. If they can grow vegetables year-round, so can regions with far more favorable conditions. Second, the technology scales. From small family farms to operations producing hundreds of tons annually, geothermal heating works at every level. Third, near-total self-sufficiency is achievable. 70% of tomatoes, nearly 100% of cucumbers. These numbers seemed impossible a generation ago. Now they are reality. Fourth, the economics favor local production. Once systems are established, Fridheimer has operated profitably for decades. The ongoing costs are minimal compared to fuel-dependent operations. Fifth, the barrier is not technology. The barrier is awareness, infrastructure, and policy. Iceland made geothermal agriculture a national priority. America has barely acknowledged it exists. In 1941, Iceland grew bananas commercially using geothermal heat. The import industry watched. In 1960. Import duties were removed. By 1961, local production was dead. In 1946, Iceland started growing tomatoes in geothermal greenhouses. The import industry watched. Today, Iceland produces 70% of its own tomatoes. They failed to stop that one. The pattern is clear. When local production threatens imports, economics get manipulated. When farmers find ways to break free from dependency, barriers get erected. But Iceland shows what happens when a country commits to energy independence for agriculture. What happens when free heat from the earth replaces expensive fuel. What happens when fresh produce travels meters instead of thousands of miles. The United States has more geothermal potential than Iceland. We have 44 greenhouses using it. 44, the heat is there. The technology works. The savings are real. The only thing missing is awareness. Now you have it. The import industry prayed you would never learn about Iceland's greenhouses. They prayed the 44 number would never grow. They prayed you would keep paying for shipped produce instead of growing your own. Today, that prayer goes unanswered. What you do with this information is up to you. But at least now you know what they hoped you would forget. Iceland proved the impossible is possible. They grow tropical plants near the Arctic Circle. They harvest vegetables when the sun does not rise. The only question remaining is this. If a tiny island can achieve food independence using heat from the earth, what is stopping America from doing the same? The answer is not technology. The answer is not resources. The answer is not geography. The answer is whether enough people learn what has been hidden in plain sight for 100 years. Now you know. Share this. Talk about it. Ask why 44 is the number. Because that number should be embarrassing. And it should be changing.